Arcane Mage Guide. Here we are, YouTube, going over Arcane Mage, teaching you guys stat priority, compositions, how to play Arcane, you know, kind of how it's feeling in the metagame, different gearing, everything you need to know to play Arcane in patch 8.1. Jumping into it first, we're going to go over talents and honor talents like usual. In this first row here, amplification. By the way, I'm trying to make this as quick as possible so you guys get all the information you need super clearly and quick. But amplification, definitely the play here in this first row, making it so when you're clear casting, your arcane missiles are doing so much more damage. It's just like an arcane empowerment also synergizes with it, which we'll go over here in a second. But amplification really helping your burst there with the missiles. So I would just always lock this in right now because of the way that arcane damage works. Like 90% of your burst damage is coming from arcane missiles, which is kind of interesting and strange this expansion, but that's just how it goes. So amplification definitely amplifies that. Sar cringe. Okay, Shimmer, always lock this in. Never even think twice about it because the synergy between Shimmer and displacement is just huge. Like if you blink once and blink back, it'll give you that second charge, so that there's always pretty much a blink available, and you're never like overcapping on your blinks. Just that second charge is unbelievably good for Arcane, so you can just be blinking everywhere. Like people that don't play Arcane Mage or maybe not familiar with Arcane Mage are like, how do Arcane Mages constantly blink every second? Shimmer plus displacement is how, right? When you're blinking forward on that 20-second cooldown, you're blinking back on a 30-second cooldown, but then it gives you another blink, so you just have like 4 blinks. You can pretty much go blink, 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 blink. That is ridiculous. I mean, if you use it all like that, then you have no mobility for a while, but still, that's an insane amount of mobility. Moving on to this next row, we have Incanter's Flow. Incanter's Flow versus Mirror Image versus Rune of Power. Incanter's Flow is pretty much always the way to go. Rune of Power makes you stand still. And we just talked about the mobility of Arcane Mages being its greatest strength. I'd say the two things Arcane Mages have going for it is the mobility and the utility. I think Rune of Power kind of ruins the mobility, so I just wouldn't even consider Rune of Power. Mirror Images, not the play. Incanter's Flow, damage on the move. I'd always lock this in. So the first 3 super easy choices there. In the 60 talent row is where you kind of have a choice, right? Supernova is my personal favorite, and I use it as a pseudo interrupt to knock people up mid-cast. So if they're casting a Chaos Bolt and they have Aura Mastery up, boom, Supernova bounces them up and down just for a second, and you stop that cast. It's like an interrupt, right? Like a Wind Shear or something. That's why I like Supernova. You can alternatively go Charged Up for a bit of extra burst. The thing with Charged Up that I don't like as much is most of your burst this expansion as Arcane is coming from Arcane Missiles. Meaning, they're not affected by Arcane Charges anyway. If you guys haven't played this expansion, Arcane Missiles does not get modified by charges anymore. They're just Arcane Missiles. You don't need a proc to use them. The only thing that actually modifies it is clear casting, getting those clear casting procs up. So there is no need to go through the stacks, which means charged up on a 40-second cooldown isn't as valuable. Having said that, it's still good to pair it with something like Presence of Mind, or still rotating through arcane charges to get more barrages out. So it's not terrible, but I like the pseudo interrupt much more. By the way, Supernova, that's exactly what it is. It's a pseudo interrupt. It doesn't do that much damage. In past expansions, Supernova would one-shot, not so much anymore. Here we have Resonance. For that third slot, Arcane Barrage deals 10% increased damage. I don't think this is terrible. I think it could be a pick versus like maybe BM Hunter's Demo Locks. I still like Supernova overall though. Being able to, I actually have a Focus Supernova and a normal Supernova. So if a Druid on my Focus target is casting Cyclone, boom, knock it up. He's casting it again, boom, Counterspell. He's locked out for, 6 seconds. He's casting it again, line of sight, casting it again, boom, knock it up, right? It just makes your class so much more annoying, so that's why I lock in Supernova there. Chrono Shift, guys, the mobility from Chrono Shift is unbelievable. Not only does it give you a sprint, but it slows the enemy. I would never unlock Chrono Shift. Actually, I shouldn't say never. Ring of Frost is good when you're playing with a Rogue a lot of the times in Rogue Mage 2s to just get the ring in case you get locked out on that Arcane tree. It gives you that Frost tree to actually go ahead and get the CC. Having said that, I still like Chrono Shift because the mobility is ridiculous from it. It's really hard for me to play Arcane without it, so I usually don't play Ring and I just fake more kicks or be more aware of when those kicks are coming, so I'm like expecting it so I don't get locked out on a critical go. You can play Ring though if you are playing the Rogue to actually guarantee that CC land more often. You know, you kicked in the poly, cast the Ring, kicked in the Ring, cast the poly, etc., etc. But I like Chrono Shift, so I'd say save Chrono Shift like 98% of the time. Nether Tempest. Okay, so this row just all sucks, right? So Nether Tempest isn't that good. It does almost nothing. Touch the Magi will break CC, so you don't want Touch the Magi. It'll break CC, it'll break blinds, polys, stuff like that. Don't play this. And then Reverberate is okay. It's just an okay talent, right? So if you're playing against something like a Demo Locker of Hunter pets, anything with more pets, you could use this to rotate through charges more. But like we just talked about, charges are a lot less crucial than they once were. So we don't care about charges that much. So Reverberates out the window, Touch the Magi, we don't want because they'll break CC. So that's where we go Nether Tempest. And what do we use Nether Tempest for? A little bit more damage here or there. We use Nether Tempest to proc down Battlefield Focus. But that's about it for Nether Tempest. We're not going like crazy trying to stack up Nether Tempest up to 4 charges and then use the Tempest. It's nothing like that. It's just use it when we can. Okay, now we have Arcane Orb versus Time Anomaly versus Overpowered. I'm always going Arcane Orb. I don't know. Overpowered is nerfed in Arena. It's not actually 60%, I don't believe. I think it's maybe 30 or I don't know the exact percentage, but I think it's a bit reduced in Arena. Time Anomaly is okay in Arcane Orb. Just gives that a little consistent pressure, right? A little bit consistent pressure on that Arcane Orb, so it's pretty nice to be able to rotate through stacks, be able to rotate through charges, and it's not good burst, but it has a little bit of consistency to the spec, right? Throw out the Barrage, throw out the Orb, throw out the Barrage, gives it something in between the goes to keep up the consistent pressure. That's why I personally like Orb over a burst spec like Overpowered. Now we are Gladiator's Medallion, Trinket, and that's just to pair it with Temp Shield. Pairing Trinket Temp, always, always, always super, super, super powerful. If you're human, you can go Relentless, and I would never play Adaptation. Arcane Empowerment, we touched on this briefly. Amplification, Arcane Empowerment is super, super powerful so that when you get that clear cast stack, boom, so much damage to the Arcane Missiles, right? It not only that fire additional missiles, but it gives you 5% more damage. And if you have 2 stacks, it's 10% more damage. So that's really how the missiles start to pump. Temp Shield definitely just always log this in. So good for Arcane Mage. I mean, sometimes Arcane Mages, if you feel like you're never going to die and you're fighting a Resto Druid, you could replace it for Kleptomania. So you can actually klept the HODs. But I mean, 99% of the matchups, I like that. And the reason I don't personally like to play Klept that often, I get a lot of questions about this, specifically as Arcane, is because you can spam Spell Steal. One of the greatest strengths of Arcane Mages is that Spell Steal doesn't have much of a mana cost, right? It's the one Mage spec where you can spam Spell Steal over and over and over and over and over. So Klepto isn't as good as the other Mage specs because you can just spam Spell Steal anyway. And then Mass Invisibility, such a fun talent, right? If your healer gets blinded, you can stop the sap off the blind by Mass Invising right at the end of the blind, right? If your healer's polyed, you can Mass Invis so they don't get repolyed. There's so much potential with this ability. I love it, love it, love it. Pretty much never trade this out. A couple considerations. If you're dying a lot, you can throw on Master of Escape instead of the extra burst from Arcane Empowerment. If you're fighting a Resto Druid, you could think about Klepto, but I really wouldn't do it. If you're dying against Spell Cleaves, you can go Priz Cloak instead of Arcane Empowerment, or Priz Cloak instead of Mass Invis, to something where you don't think you're going to get that Mass Invis value, so you can actually start blinking things like Chaos Bolt, since you have so many blinks, blinking things like Evan Bolt, or big abilities that you want to dodge, maybe a G-Pie or something like that as well. A lot of these defensive traits that you can start swapping out, like Dampen Magic, you could think about against like Shadow Priest Moonkin, double Shadow Priest Destro maybe even as well. But I usually will stick to this as my go-to lock-in. Yes, that's pretty much talents and honor talents for Arcane Mage. And then we have, let's just briefly look at stats. Stats are pretty much the same as, I think, Frost and Fire? Haste, Verse, Mastery, Crit. That's the stat breakdown. Mastery and Verse are very, very similar in priority. So if you want to go Haste, Mastery, Verse, Crit, that works. Haste, Verse, Mastery, Crit, that works. I would say Verse is a little better because it does give you the damage reduction as well. And Mastery gives you the increased mana regen, but your mana regen is so high anyway that you probably don't need it. So I would say Verse is just slightly better on the damage side, since that mana regen isn't going to be super, super necessary. And then Crit's your worst stat by far because it's just reduced in PvP. Instead of 200%, it's 150%, so it's just not as critical. Got him. Okay, so here with the azerite traits, I actually have my fire gear on because I don't have reforged to arcane right now. But with the best traits you can get is arcane pummeling and arcane pressure. You really, 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 really want arcane pummeling on as many pieces as possible. It's just so much more damage on your missiles, and like I've said like 3 times now, missiles is really how you're bursting as arcane nowadays. Arcane power, you get the clear casting up, and then pummeling, boom, tons of missiles, tons of damage, and that's really how you're gonna proc a bit of damage. So arcane pummeling, best slot. Arcane pressure's okay, helps you finish people off. It used to be so OP at the start of the expansion, it got nerfed, but now it's okay. 35% or lower, your targets are gonna, it's like an execute arcane barrage, right? Which helps finish people off, so that's good. So arcane pummeling, arcane pressure, so it, this Shadra Silk Headband would be a great choice for arcane mages. I think other considerations for this would be battlefield focus for arcane. I don't know if I have any in my gear. I don't. I'm still trying to gear up, so I don't have a ton. I think battlefield focus is okay. But yeah, I mean, arcane pummeling and what's it called? Arcane pummeling and the other trait, arcane pressure, are the 2 that I would really recommend for arcane as well. Let's see. That's gear, the azerite trade, stat priorities. As far as enchants, guys, I go with quick navigation on the weapon. I go with haste, of course, since haste is top priority. On the enchants as well, and on the gems, going with haste on top of that. As far as the trinkets go, Maledict, #1, baby. Definitely, guys, if you have the Maledict, 100%, run the Maledict trinket. Super powerful to pair with your burst. Tons of missiles coming out. This trinket's just busted. Like, any class guide right now in 8.1, you're going to use Maledict. I'm trying to think of a class that wouldn't use Maledict, and I can't even think of one. This trinket's broken. Use it. 100%. I like using the Safeguard. I don't think it's probably necessary as arcane. If you feel like you're just 100% not dying, you can definitely go with the proc trinket as well. The trinket that procs intellect instead of the tank trinket. So if you don't have this trinket, definitely just go with the proc trinket instead of that. But that's talents, honor talents, gear, stat priority. Let's take a look at compositions. I'd say the #1 composition that we've seen arcane really successful as in like tournaments or high on ladder would be arcane windwalker resto druid. I think you can run arcane assass or arcane warrior, arcane feral, but a lot of these comps might not be as powerful. Arcane windwalker, definitely the way to go. And then resto druid, the best healer for arcane mages. You can also play with a discipline priest. I think the synergy's there with Priest, but Priests just suck in the metagame, right? So Resto Druids are just really good right now, and Priests aren't quite as good. So when Priests get a bit better, then you can, you know, definitely play around with that as well. I think that's pretty much everything. I definitely do want to talk a little bit about the rotation, and then we'll probably talk in the chat, since I'm live streaming right now, talk to the chat about any questions the chat may have for Arcane that I maybe skipped over or something that you're maybe a little bit interested about. But here's the rotation for Arcane Mage. Very simple, right? Like, you're not just sitting there casting Arcane Blast. If you're sitting there casting Arcane Blast, you're going to get kicked, you're going to get interrupted, and then you can't spell steal. You can't poly. You can't do your whole, like, if you only have arcane spells. It's just don't get kicked in arcane. A lot of times you can go for fakes with arcane blast. You go fakes with polymorph, right? Fakes with polymorph, but you don't want to actually get kicked in that school. You only want another Tempest if you get a Battlefield Focus proc, so it takes it down really fast if you're running Battlefield Focus. If you're not running Battlefield Focus, don't Nether Tempest because it has a chance to break CC. Supernova, like I said, pseudo interrupt, counterspell, pseudo interrupt. So a lot of the times for the rotation, you're going to be doing something very simple like Arcane Barrage for the slow. It doesn't matter if you're at 0 stacks just to get the control up, just to get the slow up, right? This is in between a go, by the way. This is not when you're bursting. So in between a go, you're doing things like spell steal, spell steal, spell steal, slow them throughout the orb to keep the consistent pressure, build up stacks, re-slow them, re-spell steal, barrier. Going for a fake kick or fake polymorph or 2, right? Like, this is the playstyle that you're gonna have. Fake poly or 2, boom, land the full poly on the healer. Okay, now we're gonna pop something. I mean, hopefully at this point we actually had some clear casting from Arcane Explosions or just whatever. So here's our clear casting procs. So hopefully this time we get some clear casting. Boom, we land full poly on the healer. Now you can do something like Arcane Power, Presence of Mind, double Arcane Blast, and then full Arcane Missiles into another full Arcane Missiles, and then you can Barrage. That's a lot of burst. That's how Arcane Mage is going to burst. And then at the end of that, you can throw out another orb into another barrage. And at that point, your damage is kind of done. Like, you can start faking out some more missiles like this, but you don't want to do too many missiles, or else you get interrupted. And then if you get interrupted, then you have nothing, right? You really do want to get that resheep onto the healer. But that's pretty much the rotation, the playstyle. Maledict as well will go in right at the end of that rotation when the healer's maybe towards the end of the CC, so it gets value with that heal absorb. And I mean, other than that, that's pretty much the general idea of Arcane right now. So we'll go to the chat for some questions. If you guys have any questions generally, how Arcane should be played, any just random questions that I might have glazed over, stat priority, anything, if you guys in the chat, definitely let me know. And while I'm reading the questions from the chat, I want to give a huge shout out to Volts. Volts is the Arcane Mage King. He actually has been playing a ton of Arcane, probably like thousands of games of Arcane in the last season or two, and he was actually letting me know a lot of this info, because I haven't played a ton of Arcane myself. I've played a good amount, but not a ton, so thanks to Volts for all the information. And you're the Arcane King right now, Volts. Killing it, dude, killing it. Arcane Mage composition. So we did briefly talk about that. Windwalker, Arcane Resto Druid is very, very powerful. We have Assassination, Arcane Resto Druid. Those are probably your best two. You could run with a Feral, Arcane Mage, Priest or Pally, and a little bit weaker. Just the synergy's there, but the comp itself, and you can play a Warrior, Arcane Druid as well, which isn't bad. So a couple of those compositions are probably kind of like your best go. Instagram shout out. Follow me on Instagram. Instagram.com/XaryuLOL. Yeah, great. XaryuLOL on the Instagram. Definitely peep it. 2v2 combos. I think Arcane Sub, Arcane Assass, Arcane Shadow Priest. And then things like Arcane Discipline Priest, Arcane Resto Druid, and Arcane Holy Pally for healer compositions. Where can you see some handstands? Check out the Instagram. What's my go-to opener? On Arcane, a lot of the times it'll be something like Mass Invis with Orb. It doesn't break out your Mass Invis, and you can go for a Poly on the healer out of the Mass Invis, and right there you have the CC, you have some stacks. Right here, right away, you can get the Arcane Power, Presence of Mind, or you can get like another stack or two with Explosions, Arcane Power, Presence of Mind, and go straight into the missiles from there. That's the general opener. Arcane Feral's crazy. Yeah, pretty solid. If Feral's for a little bit better right now, I think the comp would get better and better. Just a little Volts in the chat. Shout out to the boy Volts. The DPS meters. I mean, the DPS isn't insane overall, but you're going to have a little bit of burst with the missiles, with the clear casting, with the Arcane Power, something like that. Using Mass Invis to protect your healer from CC? Absolutely. So if your healer's blinded, boom, throw the Mass Invis, he can't get stabbed. Your healer's polyed, throw the Mass Invis, he doesn't get repolyed. But yeah, there's a couple questions from the chat. If you guys have any more questions, definitely let me know down below in the comments. If you guys liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you did not like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs down. Talk to me in the comments about what type of videos you guys want to see in the next upcoming videos. And don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.